shared with you. But what we always like to know who's in our audience, and it's always a little bit different when you're on Zoom because you can't look people directly in the eye and go up and introduce yourselves. So Brenda, if you can move to the next slide. What I'd like to ask you all to do in the chat box, which should be at the bottom of your screen, if you could please type in your company name, and then in one word, we'd like to know how you're feeling in these unprecedented times. And I know it's hard for us trainers to keep things succinct to one word, but we're going to ask you to do that. So in the chat box, please go ahead and do that. Ooh, Glenn, I like your comment that you're feeling hopeful, and Kristen, you're feeling hopeful too. We've got some people feeling uneasy. We've got a couple of people from Flatbread Company, so thanks for joining us today. Hi, Nikki. Nikki's feeling uncertain. We've got the feeling challenged, which is a common feeling. Jennifer from Thirsty Lion feeling worried, which again is a very common feeling that we're hearing from other people. Zach from DiscoverLink feeling essential as it relates to learning. Yes, you guys are definitely in a good position there. Greg from 99 Restaurants feeling concerned. Christine isolated. So these are definitely common feelings that you hear when you ask people how they're feeling right now. A mix of both uncomfortable and feeling okay about it, or maybe feeling a little bit excited about it. And we're going to talk a lot about that today and how you can reconcile those feelings. So how many of you have been on a ton of Zoom calls? Do me a favor, just raise your hand. Okay, we're probably zoomed out a little bit, and anybody that grew up in the 60s, you might remember that show, we're gonna zoom, 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 right? That keeps coming to mind for me when I hear that I have a Zoom call, and I've been doing an average of about 6 hours of Zoom calls a day, it feels like. So we don't want this to be an ordinary Zoom call. We don't want you to feel like this bear in the next slide, who has obviously been on way too many Zoom calls, okay? So we want this to be an interactive session where people participate. We're going to ask you to do things like raise your hands, give us a peace sign. In the chat box, please write something. And also at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says reactions. And there are two options there. And so if you have a question throughout the presentation, you can hit that one of the thumbs up reaction so we could see it with your picture and be able to then unmute you so that you could ask your question. But we are going to do questions predominantly at the end of the session, okay? But please participate. When we ask you to put something in the chat box, you guys were great and just did a good job with that, but keep it up throughout the presentation.
And Maureen, you and I are going to keep it real with this group, right? I just want to be real here. With the view I have, because I'm sharing my screen, I cannot see the chat box, so you guys are in charge of that.
I got it. I'm good. Okay. So we're living in a world right now, a VUCA world. And VUCA world is a military term. It's not something new. The VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And with that, in just the terms there, it kind of feels like you've thrown a bunch of marbles up in the air, and wherever they fall, they will fall. And as I was talking to Jason and Christy about doing this session, our original topic was to talk about employee assessments, because that is what CRS specializes in. And as COVID-19 erupted and totally disrupted our lives, I became more and more uncomfortable with doing that topic. It's not important. Who really cares right now about assessing employee engagement, retention, why somebody's leaving a company? Right now, I think a lot of us are doing our best to just get through the day. And getting through the day one day may mean actually getting up, getting showered, getting dressed, putting on makeup, doing your hair. And another day getting through the day might be that you stay in a sweatshirt and sweatpants all day with showering optional. And so with that uncertainty, I went to my women's mastermind group and I told them, I said, my inclination is to not do this presentation because I would want to touch people's hearts and I would want to change their minds at a time when we're all feeling so uncertain. And Brenda and I are both members of this women's mastermind group, and Brenda, in her great way of asking questions and challenging me, said, hey, we've talked about partnering together before. I have this topic and work that I've done in this area of from now what to why not. So let's partner together and make this happen. So with that, I'm going to not delay any further. I'm going to pass. I wish I had a crystal ball to pass to Brenda because she is an expert in this area, but I'm going to do the best that I can, and I'm just going to pass another ball to her. So there you go, Brenda, all yours.
I got it. My turn. Okay. So the reason that Maureen and I began talking about this is we were realizing that the situation so many people are in. And I did write a book, very funny play on words there, Jason. Jason said I hadn't created a title for my book yet because it's called TBD. And so a lot of the things we're going to talk about today are from the book. You guys are getting a little Cliff Note version. And so just to let you know, these are some of the topics that we'll touch on very lightly today. There's way more detail in the book, of course. And then there are a number of other content pieces that you can also read about if you would be so interested. But this is the roadmap for where we're going to go today. But again, we've been on a lot of Zoom calls, and you don't want to hear us just talking at you for the next 40 minutes. So what I would ask you to do is, if you have a piece of paper handy, a piece of scrap paper, any paper at all, pen, what I'd like you to do is draw a vertical line down the middle of your paper. And then on the left-hand side, I'd like you to sign your name as many times as you can in the amount of time I give you, as fast as you can. Your goal is to get as many, your name written as many times as possible. So 1, 2, 3, go.
Brenda, does it have to be legible?
Nope.
Okay.
And I'm doing the same. Stop. All right, so in the chat, let us know how many times were you successful in writing your name? Give us your number. We're on the honor system here.
Wow, Jamie got 13, Glenn 8, Nikki 6, Kristen 6. We got a 15 there. Our highest so far is Christy. We've got 20.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Wait, I saw a funny one. Jason or Greg got 6.5, and I think Jason got 6.5. So
6.5. Okay, I like the honesty with the math there. So this is an advanced group. 21 was the goal, right? That's the highest we got, Maureen?
20.
20. All right, so this group is clearly advanced. Here's what I want you to do. Using your other hand in the right-hand column, I'd like you to do the same. Your goal is to either beat 20 or at a minimum, your personal best. Go.
This is torture.
All right, stop. I'll put you out of your misery. So here's what I want to know, and Jason, if you want to unmute people, you certainly can for this piece. Let's keep this really real. When I told you you had to use your other hand and try to beat the number, what went through your mind, or what might you have said out loud because no one could hear you?
This should be interesting.
Should be interesting. What else?
When no way am I going to beat the first time.
No,
Okay, this is not easy.
You made a mistake. You made a mistake.
You
Glad
got
it
it
didn't
right.
have to be legible.
I
But
thought it was
excited to be messy.
The truth is, you know, when things are going along as we know them and times are familiar, it's like we're writing with our preferred hand. No problem when we get good results and it's easy and we don't have to think about it. However, COVID-19 introduced something different. in our worlds, and it brought about a change that was like asking us to do even more than write with our non-preferred hand. It was sort of like, you know, writing with your toes. And when that happens, our initial human reaction is to say, no way, I can't do that. How is our industry going to handle that? What are we going to do now? Are you kidding me? Surely there's a mistake, right? All of the things that you just experienced, because what a change will do is bring uncertainty into our lives. And it's the uncertainty that really rocks our world, because it moves us from how it was, which is the comfortable, we know how to do this, we don't have to think about it world. But the change doesn't bring us immediately into the how it's going to be future, because we really can't even envision what that's going to look like. What it does do, though, is it drops us into that in-between place where that's really like, I don't know what this is going to be like. I don't know how we're going to function. I don't know how 4 of us are going to work from home today and still find enough space, right? I don't know how I'm going to get technically competent and comfortable using Zoom meetings, but it puts us in that place of uncertainty. And so what I want you to think about is how you would complete this sentence for yourself. There's no right or wrong answer. Uncertainty is fill in the blank. For you, uncertainty is what?
You can go ahead and type that into the chat box. We've got scary, an opportunity, scary again, daunting, for sure, uncomfortable, uncomfortable again, overwhelming, exciting, sort of, I like that, being flexible, intriguing, wondering if I'll have a job after this and what it might look like, for sure. That's a very common thought.
Here's the thing, you're all right. Every one of those answers describes uncertainty, because what uncertainty is in an umbrella way is unsettling. It takes us from this very stable situation, and when change drops in, it creates a very unsettled situation for us. And that unsettled situation is all of that. It is both scary and could be exciting, right? And we all handle it and meet it and deal with it very differently. Some people are really good in those situations. They say crisis reveals character. I'm coaching someone right now whose boss said, wow, is this individual leader shining? Crisis has revealed her character and she is on it. She is better than ever. For some of the rest of us, we'd really rather go hide in the corner. And so when I use some terms today, I want to be clear about what I mean by them. I'm going to use the word change. Change is the event that happens. Change is the thing that you can put on a timeline and plan for. So it's like moving your home. You could map the changes, putting your house on the market, starting to pack your things, find a new home. That's the change. But the part that really trips us up isn't the change. We usually have a handle on that for the most part. The part that really trips us up is this thing called transition. And the transition is the emotional reactions we're having to the change. And I coined a term back in 2008 that I'm going to call transition fog. The challenge for us is to figure out how to be in uncertainty, because we're so programmed to do things, but when uncertainty comes along, it really requires us to just be with it. How are we going to be with it? I mean, life is one uncertainty after the next, right? We go through a stage of life where things feel settled, and then something happens and it feels unsettled. Then it gets settled for a bit and then unsettled again. So learning how to be with uncertainty is really that muscle that we all want to build. And yet, when uncertainty hits our worlds, it's like a fog rolls in. And we can't even see our way forward. If you can relate to that, would you just like raise your hand or type an amen in the chat room? For me, you know, what really prompted me to write this book relative to the work that I do, really happened to me in 2008, where the economy was taking a nosedive and my life decided to do the same thing. I found myself unexpectedly divorcing with 2 young little boys, as consulting practice, but no guaranteed income, no health benefits, living in what I thought was my forever home that I had fallen in love with and put all kinds of energy into making it our own. And everything about my life took a nosedive. And to this day, I can get back to that space where I was sitting in the sunroom of my home with my face in my hands, and my brother and sister-in-law were there. And I really remember thinking, I don't even know how I move forward from this. I can't even picture what my life is going to look like in a week, a month, a year, 5 years. It was completely overwhelming for me. And so I began to think about it as a transition fog, where the fog rolls in over your perfect life or business plan. Sound familiar? We have COVID fog now. It's not clear where we're heading. And so I began to think about how did I navigate those times in 2008 in ways that can help other people, either in their professional worlds or their business worlds. And so I want you to think about driving on a foggy country road. Let's think about, where does the fog come from? Well, in our lives, the fog comes from 2 different things. It comes from the fact that we don't know what's next. It's the not knowing that stirs up the fog. And then the emotions that stirs up also, the anxiety, the worry, and the fear, which is the place many of us are living in right now. And we aren't built to live in it forever. But that's what creates the big fog. And so let's talk about, how do we navigate that fog? The first thing we do is we slow down. And really, we haven't had a choice, right? We've been self-quarantining. Our restaurants have closed down. The hotels are not, thriving as they were. So it got forced on us. This slowing down got forced on us. And yet, I want you to take solace in something you should know about navigating in the fog. Even though we know that we slow down and we stop accelerating, we think we don't accelerate as fast when we're going through the fog because we're trying to be careful. The fact is, we're not going as slowly as we think we are, because our brain registers speed relative to our surroundings, the buildings flashing by, the trees, etc. And in the fog, we can't see that. So we think we have slowed down more than we actually have. Now, what does that have to do with these times for you? I want to remind you that even though it feels like you might be at a standstill, or it feels like things are going too slowly and you aren't making any kind of headway or progress right now, you're probably doing better than you think you are. You're probably in some way, shape, or form making some progress. The other thing we learn about driving on country roads in the fog is that we have to depend on our low beams. We cannot see too far forward, and if we try to put our high beams on, all it does is obscure our view further. It makes it harder to see, so we have to do the low beam strategy. And our low beams actually illuminate a stretch of the road that's about 300 feet, and that's it. So we drive that 300 feet, and then we can see the next 300, and we navigate that 300, and somehow we get from point A to point B 300 feet at a time. And I think that's also something for us to keep in mind at these uncertain times, is the best we can sometimes do is see a very small stretch in front of us and figure out what our next move is going to be. And only then does our next move become apparent, and we take that move, and so on until ideally, before long, we are looking at this stuff in the rearview mirror and patting ourselves on the back for how far we've come. So the strategy for navigating with our low beams is to focus on the next right thing. That's it. What's the next right thing that I want to be dealing with? And even though I have many, many to-do lists that are hanging out here, I will tell you every day, let me just grab it. Every day, I whittle that down to just the few things that I can manage to do that day. That's it. And if I get these done, it's a success. And you know, it may just include take a shower. That's a success these days. And then I put it aside. If I do more than that, great, but I don't expect any more than that from myself because that's as far forward as I can see right now. As a speaker, I have no idea what's going to happen to speakers. You know, as someone who travels to see clients, I have no idea what's going to happen with that. So if I start thinking too far into the future, all I'm going to do is stir up more of that anxiety and that worry and that fear. Because when we are in fear and anxiety, that's a trigger, that's a reminder to us that we're too far in the future. We want to think just far enough into the future to be smart and strategic to the point that we can, but really then turn on our low beams. So my question for you is this: what's the one next right move that you could make that you're ready, willing, and able to make right now? And it can be tiny, but what's the one next right move relative to work that you would like to commit to? So go ahead, take a minute to think about that. And maybe it's the one next right move you're taking today.
And maybe it's also something personal, Brenda, you know, because I think that we're all impacted in different ways, both professionally and personally. So today may be a day where you say, I personally today need X, Y, or Z. Or today's a day where I'm feeling clarity and I feel like I could focus on something business related. And so it could be either personal or professional.
Absolutely. Last night, my big success was figuring out what to do with pork chops for dinner. That was my big next right move. Right about 4:30, I realized I had to figure that out. All right.
We have a couple answers here, Brenda. Karen is going to take an online development course. Jamie is taking it back to the basics. Glenn intends to reach out to old or new contacts and connect, which is a great thing to do in this time.
Yeah.
Nikki is doing her healthy thing, which I always admired about her. She's going to walk 30 minutes each day. Janice is going to help the team with social media and start to think about staffing. So we have some great responses here from people in terms of what their intentions are.
So don't just do that in today's webinar. I really want you to be thinking about that daily, to say, what's my next right move? Or even sometimes hourly, what's my next move? What's my next move? What's my next move? And you'll be starting to make some headway at a time when it could be tempting to just stop in place and get stuck in the fog.
Brenda, I want to bring up one more because I think it's that something that a lot of us forget about. And Christy, I'm going to call you out on this one here because I think it's important. Christy said that remembering to be kind to myself. And I hear people tell me this a lot, and I hear people saying it about themselves a lot. So thank you for the vulnerability and sharing that. It is so important to do that in this time.
Yeah, and there are times when you just don't want to do something. Last week, one day, I did not want to do my Zoom workout class. Did not want to do it. I forced myself to do it, and I was miserable the rest of the day. There was a part of me that was stomping my feet over the fact that I made myself do it. And so the next day I said, why am I not being kinder to myself? I don't want to work out today. And so I didn't. And I can tell you, I had the best, most productive day that day because I listened to myself and I did what I needed to. Which is a great segue actually to what's coming up, because when we're navigating the fog, there are some other tips to keep in mind. You want to turn down the radio. Notice when you're lost or you're in the fog, you turn the radio down or off so you can concentrate. The same thing is true now, except the radio you're needing to turn down is that voice in your head, which kind of fits with our last conversation. That voice in your head, which I call affectionately my yama yama. It's talking to me all the time. It's telling me what I should do, what I shouldn't do, that I should be moving faster, that I should know what to do now. You know, all that shaming stuff. And while we can't make it go away, we certainly can turn down the volume on it. So during this time, I invite you to do that because that voice is talking to you in ways it would never talk to your friends. And then we have to avoid those potholes. In the fog, we can't see them too easily, but they're there. And a couple of the potholes that I remember having to work with are comparing myself to other people. And that can be really easy to do in these times too. Depending on the industry you're in, life looks different. Depending on your home situation, life looks different. Depending on your financial situation, life looks different. And what we're often doing when we go to social media is we're getting to see everybody's highlight reel about their life. Now, how perfectly their family is adjusting to work from home, how wonderful, something is for them, perhaps. And it's a really not apples to apples comparison, because you're comparing what they're showing you about their highlight reel of their life to what you know for sure about the reality of yours. And in 2008, that was dangerous for me, to be spending too much time making comparisons. So avoid that pothole. The other pothole to avoid is impatience. It's easy during uncertain times to want to race through the uncertain time, get to the other side and get things settled again. Go back to using my preferred hand. And yet, if we are smart during times of being unsettled, there are, some of you said this earlier in the program, there are some opportunities and great things to come out of this period of time. So we don't want to rush through it too quickly. And
Brenda,
finally, yeah, I'm sorry, Marie.
I just want to add one more pothole that I think a lot of us get sucked into, and that's called the news. And taking too much time to continually refresh the headlines and read the headlines, and it is a rabbit hole that you can get very easily sucked down. So I think that's probably one of the biggest potholes in today's day and age with social media and instant access to news.
Well, let's ask them, Maureen, what else? What are some of the other potholes that you're needing to avoid right now? Maureen started the process with the news, but what else is on your minds? What other potholes are you experiencing?
You can put them in the chat box.
Oh yeah, put them in the chat box.
Filling other people's needs before your own. Glenn, that's a great one. Because then you have nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
Be more flexible with your loved ones living with you. Definitely a necessity, Jamie. Forgetting that my kids are going through this as well. Very, very important, because everybody deals with it differently. Those are some great examples of potholes.
Yeah, judgment, irritability. Between you and me, while he's not listening, my college son is home with me, and he's decided he needs to cut his own hair. When I walked by his bathroom sink this morning, it's full of hair. Just like, okay, say nothing, just say nothing. Ideally, it will get cleaned out of there. And then finally, one other tip about navigating the fog is to not travel alone. And I think sessions like today are examples of why it's so valuable to make sure you've got your people. That's certainly how Maureen and I came to be here today. We were with, pre-COVID, we were with our group of people. No, we weren't. We were on a Zoom call, Maureen,
right,
talking about this session today. And so, we're not traveling alone, and we've had a great time getting ready to meet up with you today. But know who your people are, the people that can support you, the people who can relate to the space you're in, the people you can be real with. You should have a list of about 5 people in particular who are your close peeps right now. Because when you've got that day that you need support, they're the people that you want to make sure you're making time for, reaching out to, calling, texting. Now, here's the thing. As I was going through my foggy times in 2008, I began to really think about fog differently. If you think about what fog is, it's like a cloud on the ground. And so there has to be a silver lining, right? And what became apparent to me as time went by is that fog is actually a freaking opportunity for growth. That's what it really is. And that may sound Pollyanna, but I think in the end, that's what it becomes. It's not that we wanted the event to happen to us, but on the back end of the event, we start making meaning out of it. And that meaning can really serve a really positive purpose. And we say, so our industry is going to be thinking differently about things. Or, gee, the universe just nudged me in a slightly different direction for my career. Or, wow, look at the impact that had on my family that we got this time together. Look at the memories we've stirred up. The thing is, it's not until these times of uncertainty are behind us that we can look in the rearview mirror and we see the gift of the fog and we see how much we've grown. In the moment, it does not feel that way. And we may not be there yet, but trust me, it's there. So we need to be ready to plan for changes, but we also have to be planning for transitions, because even as the doors open up and things start to go back to the new normal, or go not back, but go to some new abnormal, there are going to be feelings associated with that. They're going to be your feelings. They're going to be the feelings of the people you work with, the people you serve. And so let's talk about that, because there are 3 stages of emotions that start to become apparent to us. The first is a little part of us is going to be mourning what was. The way things used to be. Oh, remember when we could go out to a restaurant or check into the hotel and just do things the way we always did. Well, we're not going to do things the way we always did for a while. And there's a part of us that grieves that. We're sad about it. We may even be a little PO'd about it. COVID was like a grenade that got thrown at us, so we were in a state of shock for a while. And I want to normalize the grief is the starting point for any change. So it is okay to be there. Now, while we're experiencing that, we are simultaneously experiencing uncertainty. And so what comes along with that are some of the things you typed in your chat box earlier. I'm feeling uncomfortable. This feels very unfamiliar. I'm unsettled and anxious. Who could have ever seen this coming? This is really frustrating time. I'm working from home with all of my family members. And yet, it's also in that very unsettled state that we are forced to get creative. We are forced to answer the question, now what? And begin to think about why not? It isn't the way it used to be. What could it look like? And this is a chance for us to get clear about the way we want it to be before it just inadvertently settles into some new norm that we didn't strategically think about or choose, but it just settles into some what will be that we don't like. So that is the gift, the creativity, the opportunities, and the possibility that coexist with our grief. And then the easy part is what is going to, what it will be in the future. Ideally, we move into that then very comfortably. That's where the new possibilities start to unfold. We may even look back and say, wow, this is even better than the way it was before this hit. It's a little exciting to think about starting over differently. And we're in a place of acceptance and feeling a lot more settled. So I just want to pause there for a moment, because to me, this is really one of the most important PowerPoints we're going to share with you today. Any reactions you have to this? It's not a nice linear experience, by the way. Let me just jump ahead and then we'll come back. They coexist. So at the beginning of a change, we spend much more time in the what was stage and a lot more of our time in the uncertainty stage and very little thinking about the future. That's when we're in crisis. But as we climb higher on this graph and we think about time going by, we start to spend less time grieving, more time in the uncertainty stage looking at possibilities and opportunity, and we even let ourselves start to think about the future and get a little excited for when things turn the corner. So it's not a nice linear thing. So as you think about either of those 2 slides, questions or comments, put them in the chat room, because we really would like to hear from you.
And Brenda, I'd like to share some examples that, every day in the news and certainly in the industry newsletters that come out, we're hearing stories of restaurant and hotel companies that are doing things that are creative, that are forward thinking. And it's happening in both the restaurant and hotel space.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing companies like Texas Roadhouse that has started to sell raw steaks and a cook at home meal package for people, which is not something that they had done prior. We're seeing, other pizza concepts that are selling pizza kits that you get the product and then you take it home and bake it there. Wawa which is a big convenience store chain here in Pennsylvania, and they have spread. They announced yesterday that they're going to be doing DoorDash, which is something totally different for them. Marriott, you know, as we can imagine, hotels are getting hit pretty hard with travel being way down. Marriott announced a few days ago that they will be giving their members points for ordering takeout and delivery from a variety of restaurant concepts.
Right.
So we're seeing lots of partnership. We're seeing lots of coming together in communities. We have a restaurant, Brenda and I, here in our community that was new. It was not making its mark. Its service was very hot and cold. I questioned as a restaurateur whether or not it would make it. And I have to tell you, they have solidified their future with how they have handled COVID, because they have tied curbside and takeout to charity. In one weekend, they raised $10,000 for the food bank. Other restaurants saw this, and then other independent concepts joined together to create more philanthropy, to create more opportunities to give back to the healthcare providers. So this company is called the Epicurean Garage. They've even gone so far, which I thought was really creative, to brand toilet paper. So every order you get from them, you get a roll of toilet paper, because we all know, God forbid, toilet paper run out, right? Everybody's hoarding it. So it is nice to see the variety of creativity that is being forced upon us in order to survive this COVID experience.
Any other reactions or questions to that? Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, we have a few other comments in the box. Let's see. So Kristen said she really appreciates the insight that they coexist. It's natural right now to be moving between the stages, which is so very true. Glenn says this slide is great. And Glenn, I'm not sure if you're referring to this one here or the next one, but they both tie so closely together. Jason loves me, Wawa. And Janice, we had to adapt so quickly to COVID that the discussions we're having now are such a relief, because we're now looking at what's next. More exciting, much more exciting to have better focus.
Yeah. And that's why we've called it, it's the now what is the OMG. But then it does create a why not? Well, why not think about that? Well, why not do it differently? Well, why not explore this thing? Why not do this thing we've talked about all these years and never got around to? So that's the creativity and the opportunity that lives there. It's really all about what you're thinking. Now, really think about what you're thinking. There are going to be business who are just playing, going, we're dead. We're dead to this. This is it. It killed us. And there are going to be other businesses like the Epicurean Garage who are saying, hey, let's just circle everybody up. Let's get our servers together. Let's get the ownership together. Let's get some community members together and figure out some creative way to move through this, because they believed there was a way to go through this together creatively. And so I wanted to share this model with you to also normalize some things and why it's important to think about what you're thinking. And that's because whatever you decide to think, you get to be right about. Here's what I mean. There's a lot of data out there in the observable environment at the bottom rung. But we naturally select out certain things that we pay attention to. And we add meaning, make assumptions, draw conclusions, create a belief system about things. And based on that, we take action. Most of this, though, happens in our heads. So what we see is something happens, people react. Something happens, people react. Let me give you a quick example. Someone walks into a meeting late. And something happens in our head, and we start ignoring that person. Because what happened in our heads is we go, John is late again. He's always late. Gosh, he doesn't value us. He thinks his time is more important than ours. And so I'm going to ignore him. But what sometimes happens is we have to think about what we're thinking, because we make up stories about things with limited data sometimes, without all of the information. And let's imagine John now comes into our office at the end of that meeting, closes the door and says, I've got to talk to you. I'm sorry I was late, but I just got some upsetting news about a family member who's dealing with COVID right now. Notice what happened. More data came into the picture. And with that, you now add different meaning, make different assumptions to what's going on, and you act differently. So whatever it is you're thinking about, you get to find data to support it, and we always do. I was coaching a woman years ago who was brought to me for good reasons. She was a leader that they wanted to support and retain. And when she came to me, she had already made up a story in her head that the company wanted to get rid of her and that her teammates didn't value her and she was not a good leader, and so they were punishing her with coaching. And I said, well, you know what? I am sure you can leave here and find ammunition and data to support that belief if you so choose. However, your assignment between now and the next time we meet is to go out and look for data that you are valued, that your teammates want to work with you, and that this is an investment in your future so they can retain you. So tell me how that goes. And when I saw her the next time, she was aglow. She was aglow. I didn't even have to ask her. And she said, oh my gosh, I found supporting data that this is not a punishment. But yes, you get to be right about whichever story you want to make up. Which one do you want to live with? And I think COVID is making that true for all of us. We can either live with the story in our heads that this is the worst thing that's ever happened and it's going to take us down and this is the end, or we can live with the idea that this is a time of bringing us back into a 2.0 version of ourselves. It's like somebody said a big reboot button, and it's saying, who do you want to be as an individual? What's your personal 2.0 version of you? What's your business's 2.0 version of you? What is the 2.0 version of the world or your family? And with that, you will see evidence that it could be this very oddly wrapped gift that came our way right now. But you get to decide, and the people who are choosing their thoughts carefully are going to have a very different experience of COVID-19 in this time. So this is about helping you to create what I call a TBD mindset. First of all, we want to normalize your feelings about this time because it's a crazy time. And you don't want to ignore them. You want to feel them so you can move past them and not get stuck in them. We want to invite you to give yourself what you most need. Wake up and say, what is it I can handle today? What's my next right move? And what am I not going to make myself do? And I'm not going to shame myself over it. Surround yourself with good people. They're your dream team. Put the past in its place. The past was perfect for that time. Perfect. We were doing the best we could at that time with what we had and what we knew. But now we're on to a new day. Allow yourself to be joyful and positively expectant. Sometimes we feel guilty feeling positive during these times, but don't. Allow yourself to get a wee bit excited about what the future is going to look like and how it could be different and what changes you could make. Be grateful for your fog. It's a freaking opportunity for growth. You may not be thanking it yet. Someday you may. Appreciate yourself. You're doing the best you can. Appreciate the others around you who are doing the same. Allow yourself to find some fun in your day and believe. Really, truly believe. Because we're in a now what? We're all in it together. I happen to believe that behind every now what is a why not? Ready to be unleashed. So think about what's your why not? This is the time to get out of the box. Maureen, would you like to weigh in on anything on any of those points that I moved through fairly quickly as I looked at the clock?
Yes. Well, thank you. No, Brenda, I want to thank you tremendously for joining us today and for being willing to put some fun in this for me. It's been a true pleasure working with you on this, and I'm glad that you helped me shake my fog to see that there were other opportunities to be able to have that impact on people in a way that would touch their minds and hearts. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And in the spirit of chart, Brenda just mentioned the box. Brenda has very generously generously offered to share her new Resilience in a Box kit that she has. It's called a Now What Transformation Kit. But here's what you have to do. There's all sorts of fun things inside, including Brenda's Now What Transformational Fog cards and other things that are secretive. These are hot off the press. But here's what you need to do. There's the box, here's the inside.
And this is the teaser. This is my why not that the transition fog is making possible for me right now.
So here's what you need to do to be able to be entered into the drawing for one of Brenda's boxes. We want to hear your stories of how you're navigating the fog. So whether it be that what's your organization doing, what are you doing? We intend to do this webinar for other organizations, and we want to be able to share your stories of what you're doing to help get through this. And you can email those stories to me. My email address is here on the screen. It's mrukin@consultcrs.com. And so today is Wednesday. If you can have your stories to us by Friday, Brenda and I will, Brenda, I'm calling an impromptu happy hour on Friday, and we will draw a name out of the hat from the stories that we get. And then Brenda will go ahead and ship you one of her boxes. So thank you so much, Brenda, for your generosity.
Maureen, we also welcome any feedback about the webinar so that if we do it again, we can make improvements, make it as good as it can possibly be. So please don't be shy with your feedback.
Absolutely, please do. And on the next slide, you will see here is our contact information. We're here to support you. We're here to answer any questions you may have. So please reach out to us and let us know how, A, like Brenda just said, how can we make this better? And B, what can we do to support you? We greatly appreciate your all being here today. And Jason, do we have any time for any quick questions?
Sure. Why not?
Okay.
I like it.
So if you have a question, go ahead and under reactions, go ahead and pick the thumbs up icon so it will show up on your screen, and then we can unmute you. Any questions?
I can also go back to any of the slides if you've got a specific question about any of that.
Okay. This is the quietest I've ever seen a chart group. It's because we're not in person. Okay, let's see. Oh, Jamie said, thank you so much for sharing. Glenn has a question. How do you know when the fog is over? Great question.
I think it dissipates very slowly. You know, someone said to me, even about COVID-19, it's not going to be like a light switch goes off. It's going to be more like a dimmer switch. And, you know, if you think about fog, sometimes it slowly dissipates. I think that 2008 happened to me, what? You know, do the math, a long time ago. And there are still times when I can get into grieving about something from 2008 or feeling a little unsettled about something. But the thing is, I spend far more of my time, the greatest majority of it, in the what will be and thinking about appreciating the present and the future. Very minimal amount of time is in the past. So I think it's that chart where you see the progression that helps you to see where you are with that.
Thank you, Christine. So I would like to, because Brenda is very humble, I'm going to put this out there. Brenda does have a TED Talk that is more in depth about this topic. So you can go to TEDx, Navigating Transition Fog is the title. It's listed here on the slide. If you're yearning for more information, please go ahead and watch the rest of it. And also Brenda's book obviously sheds some more light. But thank you, Jason and Christy, for having us today. We greatly appreciate the time.
Maureen, I would also tell you too, just in terms of why nots and creative possibilities, the TEDx is only 9 minutes long. As you start to get your teams back together and online again, show it and have people react to it. One of the things I'm working on this week is I'm going to do sort of a Cliff Notes version of the book and a conversation discussion guide that I can make available to teams so that when the lights start coming on, my resources can be of real value to people, which is the only reason I do it. So when that's hot off the press, I can let Maureen know it's my project. It's my low beams project for the next week.
Thank you, Brenda. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. And thank you both for a great presentation today. I think everyone can take themselves off mute and we can give you a big warm chart round of applause. I'm also going to give a shameless plug that we don't always give to Brenda's book, actually, because when she first started talking, I was like, I need to read that book. So I went onto her website, and if you enter in your email, you actually get the first chapter downloadable to be able to read while you're waiting for the book to arrive. So I highly recommend on doing that. It's such a fantastic topic, and you brought certainly some validity to the way I have been feeling over the past few weeks and trying to navigate through this. And thank you for that reassurance, as well as seeing that there is a way out of it if we stop and think about it.
Mm-hmm. You all send a big ripple, so how you do this will affect a lot of people.
Super. Well, thank you again. And I'm going to be plugging you for a future chart speaker position.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much. We are now going to move on to Ask My Peers for the last half hour of our